Can good design shape a better world? At Monocle's Quality of Life conference in Barcelona this September, we'll be putting that question to the people who already are. Join leading designers, architects, and creative leaders as we explore how design intersects with culture, business, and everyday life. Plus, great food, excellent company, and plenty of Catalan charm. Find out more and book your seat at monocle.com/conference.
This is Monocle on Design, a show where we discuss everything from architecture and craft to furniture and graphic design. I'm Nick Manise. On today's program, we speak to the architect behind this year's Serpentine Pavilion. We head to Lisbon Design Week to hear about the latest work on the Iberian Peninsula. Plus, we talk to Matter and Shape's Dan Thawley. All that coming up on Monocle on Design. Hello and welcome to today's program. We're starting in London with the Serpentine Pavilion, which is set to open to the public later this week. The temporary structure, which is built in London's Hyde Park every summer, is often used as a conceptual testing ground for the selected architect. This year, that's Marina Tabassum. The Bangladeshi architect's pavilion is titled A Capsule in Time and features 4 sculptural wooden forms. Their translucent facade diffuses light, creating a dappled glow throughout the interior. Crucially, a moving element allows one of these capsule-like structures to be repositioned, allowing the pavilion to transform into an entirely new space. To find out more about the commission, Marina joined me down the line, and I began by asking about her design for the pavilion.
In a way, it relieves you of that responsibility of a building which shapes people's lives, let's say. It's a place where people come together to have a nice time for different occasions, for different activities. And the idea is you take away nice memories, you take away being in a nice space, and then one point this building will vanish in a way. So that temporality is also an important part of it. But at the same time, it will have its life to some extent in the virtual realm. I do work a lot with geometry and very pure geometric forms. So the building has that, what I call like a half capsule. So that formal approach is about geometry. And at the same time, trying to use material which I can find here. We've never built with wood because wood is not a material for us in Bangladesh. Because of our tropical climate, people try to stay away from wood as much as possible. There's only a very few sections of the country where they use wood as a structural member, but otherwise you don't see much of wood being used. So this is a new material for me in that sense, that it's a wooden building structure which is sourced here. You know, we try to create this openness. It's a very archaic form, but at the same time, it's very open. So to embrace the location of the park and how the park actually enters into the space, it's solid, but at the same time, it's very porous. Those are issues I also try to address in our architecture, that how you blur the edge of the boundary between in and out, so that in is out and out is in. So all those aspects are pretty much there.
So there are some kind of principles that stretch across your work. Even if you look at the mosque that you worked on, you see light filtering into the space. I mean, I see some of your residences. There's also light and natural light inherent to that. Why are these enduring themes that come up again and again for you? And how does that link back to building a better world?
Light gives atmosphere. Light is a very important element. And that's why I try to use light in every possible way. In the mosque, you see light brings the sense of spirituality in that space. And light actually captures the spirit of the place and the space also. I'm always drawn to use light, especially daylight, in any possible way I can. Most of our projects will address daylight and ventilation. In our pavilion also, light plays an important role. We wanted an ethereal atmosphere into the space. That's why we were looking into translucent material. So the wood gives it a structure, but there is this facade which are translucent. We were initially thinking of jute as a material, but then jute doesn't have the right kind of fire rating that's needed to be placed so close to a very important gallery. and also in the garden. So we had to source something which is local, and also we are using polycarb with a sort of a film on it that gives you that translucent light. And I think that is playing out quite beautifully.
Why is honouring spirit of place important to you? Why should we care about that?
I think architecture to me is that you come here, you experience it, and it's something that should touch you to the core. It should create a certain kind of a dialogue between the visitor or the person who's inhabiting this space. And I think that if you have that spirit of place, and I think that's very important, because many buildings don't have that. And to be able to capture that spirit, which actually gives it a certain kind of personality, and that personality actually speaks to you. When you're able to create that, it stays with you. For me, it's very important that my buildings are a being rather than being a very static, lifeless object. So that's why I think bringing in light, bringing in anything natural addresses those aspects of a personality, or let's say a being which has a life of its own.
You talked about putting people at the centre of your work and that being really important. How does this link to that?
The way we designed the pavilion, it's a very archaic form, as I was saying, where you see a vaulted structure with a half-dome shapes, which is trying to create this place where you would come and you would spend time. I want people to come and sit there to be able to enjoy that space. People from all different backgrounds coming together and just celebrating humanity in a way. That's the plan for me.
So then how do Shamayana tents come into this?
When we thought about this whole typology of pavilion, I looked into my own background, and especially where I come from, in the Indian subcontinent, let's say. Shamiyanas have been used from the Mughal time or even before that. So these are structures made out of either bamboo as a structure and then made of fabric entirely. So it's fabric creating these very kinetic structures built to hold gatherings underneath it. When we were young, most of the weddings or even religious gatherings were used to take place under the shamiyanas. And I have memory of these beautiful light coming through these very colorful fabric. And that's something stayed with me. I thought, if it's a pavilion and if I have to bring in my own background, that light really stayed with me. How can you interpret that light in London in a way? So that's how it sort of connected.
You mentioned the pavilion again there and the fact that this is temporary, but what legacy do you hope this project leaves? What do you hope people maybe take away when they visit it?
There is this tree in the middle, which also represents life. It represents nature to some extent. There are seating all around the pavilion. There are lots of seats. You can just sit there and enjoy the day going by, and then the light coming through the space, filtering through these panels. It has a life of its own. If you just sit there and try to enjoy and take it in, and I think that would be wonderful.
I want to ask as well, the Serpentine Pavilion is one of those bellwethers of the industry. It's a project that everyone looks to. And this is a huge commission. This is, the way I see it, a soapbox moment for you. Is there a message that you want to send to the broader architecture industry at the moment?
I mean, it's difficult to say. I think every architect who has done it has their own take on it. For me, I think I bring in this whole notion of the language I developed over time. That's there. I think I always like people to inhabit my spaces, to have that experiential space where you gather some memories. And I think those are important to me. But yeah, not that I have a huge ambition from it. I am just waiting to see how people react to it. When we started designing it, one thing that came to mind was what would be the afterlife? And for me, the afterlife was the starting point of this project, in a way, rather than these 5 months. At the end, it will have a life of its own. It will find a location where it would settle and find a home. And so the idea for me has always been that I wanted it to turn into a library. That's why the way that we have designed it also has that ability to turn it into a nice library space. I think knowledge is important. And nowadays, when we hear things about book bans and, how education is being regulated, I think it's important to bring out knowledge out there. And I think it would really make a nice, beautiful library if it's placed somewhere. So that's how we started the whole design process. I think we can contribute in architecture culture in so many ways. It's not always about building things. And I really don't believe in building a lot of buildings either. That's the reason I try to limit my projects so that I have the ability to actually give it what it requires in terms of time, effort, knowledge, creativity.
My thanks to Marina Tabassum there. The Serpentine Pavilion will be open to the public from this Friday, the 6th of June, until Sunday, the 26th of October, 2025. We cross to Lisbon now, where the third edition of the city's Design Week has just wrapped up. With a focus on contemporary design and high craft, the local creative community presented their work in showrooms, boutiques, galleries, workshops, hotels and museums. Events welcomed design-minded visitors and a curious public too, and in that number was this show's producer, Maylee Evans. She sent us this report.
For me, Lisbon Design Week was all about finding makers who demonstrated a real keen attention to materials and techniques, as well as objects that wear their handcrafted credentials with pride. This isn't a design week where you'll find a hall filled with the usual suspects or brands. In this case, you'll often be able to meet the maker yourself, perhaps see where they work, ask a designer questions about process that showcase the close relationship that many of them maintain to manufacturers, a key facet that this city is able to boast.
I think many people have the perception that creativity comes from the individual, behold, I'm the artist, But I don't quite believe it. I feel that there's a larger sense of creativity that exists in the environment that you choose to be in.
That's Witold Riedel, a German multidisciplinary artist living in Lisbon. Having arrived just a few months ago, the third edition of Lisbon Design Week also happens to be the first time the creative exhibited in the city.
I work in my art about the interconnectedness of everything. And then from that, I'm able to create work that ends up looking like drawings or photographs or, in this case, many ceramics. It's a very challenging time we live in, where people become more like machines and machines become more like people. And so it's really important, I think, that we're able to find time with each other, with objects we make, and with the world we live in while we're not connected to digital devices.
Yes, it definitely feels like you've created a sanctuary here. You've got the sound of birdsong, but we're not actually outside, we're in the gallery space here. I wondered if you could introduce the exhibition that you've got on show here as part of Lisbon Design Week.
Okay, so the show is called Star Resonance, and the title sounds very cosmic. It's an observation of various transformations of things. We have a large drawing that was made from pollution collected from trucks in Delhi. We have ceramics that were made with clay, either collected near where I was born, collected somewhere near where we live, and then fired in my studio in Ajuda in Lisbon several times, sometimes 7 times, and glazed. This is the first time this space is used. So Richie Hawtin, the quite famous techno DJ, the father of minimal techno, and his wife, Laura Kating, who is an art historian, they opened this space to express the love for many Japanese culture, for ceramics, and for the arts. To help with this entire endeavor, I created a small series of sake cups. Each one is individually crafted.
Is it faceted? It's all been carved away by hand. It's not a case of turning on a wheel. It looks incredibly laborious.
Thank you. Yes, it is incredibly laborious. It takes us several days using this very old Japanese technique, kurinuki, which means hollowing out. I start usually with almost 1 kilogram of clay, and I end up with about 300 grams. So they're very, very fragile and very thin, but I fire them again so many times that they become very interestingly structured and have different layers and glazes to them.
You've been living in Lisbon for a couple of months now, and I wondered what you found about the city, what makes it so dynamic.
Portugal, maybe by landmass, is not very large, but the ocean extends, and so the feeling of connection to nature is very strong here. And when you think the entire country has about the population of New York, it's incredible that this is possible. I find that coming here as an artist and in a vulnerable state, because I didn't know so many people, and reaching out to people, I am really amazed how wonderful and welcoming everybody is. We feel very welcome here with our family. I love how many people know quite a lot about ceramics here and are very supportive. It's a real incredible network.
What are you hoping, taking part in this week or being able to share your work with the public and other creatives living in the city?
Well, I hope that many people will love these pieces so much that they want to take them home. But the major hope is for people to understand why this work is here, that we're here together, that there is a possibility of creation of something that is beyond the individual. As an artist who has arrived here in Lisbon, I obviously hope to be able to connect to other artists and work with them. And I think Lisbon Design Week has been doing quite a good job about it.
A comment which would be music to the ears of Michelle Feitman. As founder of Lisbon Design Week, producing an annual citywide event independently isn't without its challenges. But this too comes with freedom in setting the tone and making choices when it comes to programming.
It's not always very comfortable because it's a challenge financially to run it, but it is true that we can test different things, we can really speak with people and tailor it and try to keep our vision intact, which in this case is really to have a mix of venues that shows a big range of creativity and at the same time a very high quality item. The feeling that we had when we started was that everybody was working in its little corner and they were all complaining that there were no new opportunities. And through this process, we see more and more collaboration between young designers themselves, either because they create collective to be able maybe to present themselves in a fair abroad, or we see also actual objects that result from these collaborations. We have seen also this movement in some of the meetings and events that we organize. The community is now much stronger. People are really trying to speak as a one voice.
This isn't small makers, you've got big brands involved who are local, who are connecting with other creatives who they've maybe not come across. What are some of the collaborations you're excited about seeing or showcasing this year?
We have some international brands and we have also several young Portuguese brands that are opening their doors for the public coming from abroad or the Portuguese public. It's very interesting to see these young brands. I think the beauty of this is that important figures like if Manuel Aires Mateus, this famous architect, has accepted to have some of his objects edited by this smaller firm. So otherwise we have also newcomers, which are a bigger organization that do their own thing in a creative hub, which is called Beato Hub in Marvilla. I think they will attract a different public because they are more about trying to put together the brands and the designers, which is always a problem in Portugal. We have like unexpected venues, like a bakery, like a hairdresser, places where it's not obvious to find design piece, and we place some of the designers there to give a bit a different environment and also to ask other people from our community to help showcase. So this is a way for us to add to the few showrooms that we have, international and domestic. We have art galleries, some hotels that we select because they have a strong architectural and design element in it. Design is culture. We have a big support of the cultural institutions, and this year we have 5 museums on board.
One of my highlights this year was the Museum of Design, where the Young Design Generation exhibition showcased selected creatives through an open call to the public. Their work is nestled amongst the historical greats of the institution's long-term exhibition, What Are Things For? And it will be there until the 27th of July. The decision to ensure that these contemporary makers are placed in conversation with the masters and archival greats feels like an inspired one. But for now, we head to the former atelier of the architect Manuel Aires Mateus. There, a group show, Sobremesa, brought designers and artists from Spain and Portugal to explore the idea of the dinner table as a starting point. Co-curating the exhibition with the Spanish design agency Moot was the product designer João Xará.
the Iberian culture and Italian and also in France, we have a lot of time spent after a meal being at the table on the sunny afternoon during the Sunday. The sobremesa name appeared a different meaning from the Spanish side and a meaning in Portuguese side. In Portuguese, sobremesa means dessert, the dish, and sobremesa in Spanish, it means the moment that you are on the table after a meal, the moment itself. We thought that could be a nice name for the exhibition. We knew that we wanted to work on that and gather different designers, different ages, more emerging, more established designers. Let's think what you have on the table. You have glasses, you have tableware, but then we were thinking, okay, being at the table, you are seated on a table, you have lighting on a table, sometimes you have a speaker. Okay, maybe everything can be around the table, and the exhibition, you see vases, you see speakers, lighting objects, a very diverse range of products, colors, textures, materials, techniques. We wanted to have more industrial, more handmade, more artisan, more different variety of textures. One of the pieces that I really like the most is the sound, actually. I gave totally freedom to Claudio Oliveira, a live producer. For me, the sound was really a super nice surprise in the exhibition. The pieces, it was different because we were already thinking about them for a long time, for months. When you see the exhibition, you don't know who is the emergent, who is the established designer. I think that's a balance that disappear on the table, and I think it's not super important. They are all together and they are all important. In my personal work as a product designer, what I do the most is tableware. Decoration work is not a very frequent work that I do.
And so how did you find that role of curator, being a designer yourself? How does that change how you approach it, knowing all the questions or challenges from a maker's sort of point of view?
Being a designer, I think it gave me a quick response. Okay, I like this material together with this one, this height, they will work together. Being a product designer, I think it helped me with mood to create a balance with all these colors and textures, create a full table but subtle table. And I think being a product designer helped me to arrange those specific objects better, I think.
One other notable visit was to Tilburg, a new interior decoration brand making their debut and showing their first collection at this year's Design Week. Items on show were designed and handmade in Portugal, with designer Klaas van Tilburg developing this collection, taking his cue from the existing manufacturers and materials and techniques that could be found nearby. Each object, be it cushions or ceramic cups, was rendered in jet black, allowing contrast in tone, texture and shape to come to the fore. It's definitely a brand I'll keep an eye on in future. Whether design was found in a showroom, a bakery, a hairdresser or a hotel lobby, this year's Lisbon Design Week was a testament to the creativity of a city where close links to production allow for continual innovation and risk-taking. I'm already booking my ticket for next year's edition. I hope to see you there. For Monocle in Lisbon, I'm Maylie Evans.
Finally, on today's program, we talk with the curator and editor, Dan Thawley. He's also the artistic director of Matter and Shape, an annual design salon which coincides with Paris Fashion Week every March. In only its second edition this year, the event doubled in size, hosting 60 exhibitors with 8,000 visitors perusing works from a mix of emerging and established names. With the event now in our rearview mirror, all of this begs the question, why does it matter now? Well, that's because the design industry, at least in my opinion, doesn't necessarily have pop cultural power. Indeed, you're unlikely to find the names of the best sofa designer or chair designer plastered across billboards or making headlines in weekend supplements. This is partly to do with the fact that the design industry can feel exclusive to outsiders, but by aligning with fashion, Dan Thawley and Matter and Shape are changing that narrative and opening design up to a new audience. To discuss this and more, Dan joined me in our Paris studio.
I think that the idea of Matter and Shape is to essentially not graft itself onto existing design world events and the calendar that is already something that's very full, but rather to think about other people that don't have the opportunity to be in those places, people that may watch that from afar, people that have either the means, the curiosity, or a real legitimate reason to have access to different ideas in the worlds of furniture, textiles, architecture, new materials, art objects, all of those things that are very pertinent to Paris and very pertinent to the worlds of fashion, of haute couture, of watches, of jewelry, that all have their base here in the city. We're a stone's throw from the Place Vendôme, where some of the most incredible high jewelry is made, where watches are made, where all of these companies have spatial identities as well that they need to create newness in. They have shops to fill with furniture. They have hotels and restaurants that they've started to build into their empires. So all of these things felt interesting to us as a means to stimulate this idea of a sort of new portal where the physical was important.
This sounds like it was also about bringing in, I guess, a new audience. What are you, I guess, hoping to achieve from that? Is this for the brands that are showing there, or is it for maybe showing people the potential of what can be done in their spaces, the world that they furnish them or surround themselves with?
I think it is very much a very multidisciplinary event that we've sought to create and hopefully achieved to some degree already by our second edition. Brands, young designers, family companies, multinationals still feel like they're in a tunnel of communication, that they're always speaking to their own audiences. And the idea that an aestheticized public that is attuned to fashion and culture in certain ways still has a long way to go in learning about the history of design. But the point is, there's never been so much interest in it. Fashion has gone through so many waves of digitalization. The fact that we can now watch a live stream of any fashion show in very high resolution from all angles instantaneously around the world, the design world hasn't quite achieved that level of production yet. There is still a lot to be done there, as well as also activating the idea of seamless selling of design objects, which is also more difficult to show, to explain, to send than a pair of shoes or a handbag. So we kind of pride ourselves in thinking about design in a very 360-degree way, that it's not categorized. The curation of the different expressions of design can be from a very small object up until monumental expression of marble. The idea is very much to tick a lot of boxes, to allow people to meet buyers, collectors, designers, journalists, CEOs, whoever it may be, and start new conversations that may be personal or professional, to project ideas into a possible future where there's a pop-up shop of one of those designers in another city because you've met this other exhibitor. Likewise with all of the retailers that follow Matter and Shape and have also recognized how much lifestyle and design objects form a part of the lives of their clients. Multi-brand stores and department stores also have started to show more progressive ideas of design, whether it's having beautiful glassware and vases next to a rack of high-end clothing in a multi-brand store. The department store may have had the pots and pans in the basement and the bedding on level 6. Now they're thinking about interacting directly with interesting design companies, whether it's Japanese or Nordic or local crafts-based companies that can make objects that fit into the lives of their customers.
I'm also curious, I feel like fashion transcends pop culture for whatever reason. We talk about what people wear on the red carpet. I would say that a regular punter might be able to rattle off a few designer names. Whereas with furniture, for whatever reason, and objects, it tends to fly under the radar. It feels like there's less of an appreciation for it. You're maybe seeing this shift. Is that fair to say? And what do you think is maybe causing this shift? Is Matter and Shape hopefully playing a role in that?
I think it really does drum down to this idea of people curating their lives, and that knowledge is coming back. The idea of curation and of knowledge and connoisseurship is something that people do respect. There is a certain disparity between what has been available in design around the world and what people have been given access to in the past 40 years in this industrialized period of furniture production. It has always been for this extremely privileged audience, whether it's a mid-century piece, an original that's worth 100,000 euros, or a piece from a company like a Casino or a Vitra that is still somewhat gatekept from the everyday punter. Helping people to understand that there's a middle ground between your Habitats and your IKEAs and a Jean Prouvé house is important. And I think that middle ground is very real. It's fluctuating with the time. It has its moments of this kind of resurgence of collectible design, which opens up all these other doors of, is it furniture? Is it art? Is it sculpture? Why is it so expensive? All of these questions create new conversations and markets. But we're also seeing a time where the age of the industrial designer from the 20th century is somewhat being monumentalized. We're understanding how important, say, collaborations with IKEA were in the 1980s, or an early Mark Newson or Ron Arad design did change the course of history. We're sort of protecting their legacies in a very stratified way through companies. Events like Matter and Shape show people that maybe you'll never have the original, but the editions are available in your capital city for the same price as a new jacket, or you can have it customized with a new fabric and it doesn't have to look exactly like it looked 60 years ago. All those things are fascinating to me. Just that idea of accessing those companies, because many of them aren't available in every city. They don't have the huge network of stores like fashion does. I could ask you to name them the best multi-brand furniture store in many cities, and I think, like me, you'd probably have a little bit of a struggle. These things are often either specific chain distributors, or the gallery model, which is also very, very important to design, does come with certain boundaries, and they're not real boundaries, they're invisible boundaries. The boundary that comes with privilege, and the idea that people don't feel comfortable to walk into a sort of hallowed design gallery like they don't into an art gallery. You can go into them as easily as you can go into a grocery store and consume whatever art or design is in there as you wish. But if you don't have the right clothes on, the right skin color, and perhaps the confidence, sometimes you will think twice about doing that. That's been something we've been discussing at Matter and Shape, with the sense of breaking those boundaries.
And that's part of the reason of, I guess, hosting this whilst Paris Fashion Week is taking place. If this were to take place during Paris Design Week, by contrast, it would be speaking to a crowd that's already familiar with design and how it works.
Absolutely. There's something to be said about finding the middle ground, because we also have the idea that to cultivate still a collector's base and a group of professionals that are going to interact with Matter and Shape, we also understand how important that is. I think it's about that sort of balance of allowing them to see the newness and the sort of fresh feeling bringing a more international global community has, and for those young people to see the real design world that they usually are not interacting with, because they're going to become, if they are not already, upwardly mobile, salaried professionals in creative industries who will want to buy a carpet, who will want to buy a service of tableware in 5-10 years. All those things are a part of the natural evolution of the way people curate their lives. And I think you need to open the door for those people, because otherwise it's just going to be constantly a sort of aging population that is looking at the same pieces from the same galleries in the same location every year.
My thanks to Dan Thawley there, and that's all for today's show. For more design stories, listen to our 5-minute midweek bonus show, Monocle on Design Extra, which airs on Thursdays. And if you enjoy print, then do pick up a copy of Monocle magazine as well. It's on all good newsstands now. Today's episode was produced and edited by Maylee Evans, with assistance from Steph Chungu. I'm Nick Manise, and you can reach me on nm@monocle.com. Thanks for listening.